Well, I guess we're building the combat portion of Magic the Gathering. Alright, just like last time, I've gone ahead and I've highlighted the key points here of this comment, of the request here. And they said they want a turn-based system. Probably should have highlighted that portion as well. My bad. But we want a turn-based system. So it's kind of building off of like what we had last week. We want a button to be able to pass turns. Two sprites that can target each other with visual feedback. And the requested feedback is something like a line that goes from our attacker to the target. Another button that starts the targeting, so we have a button to go into combat and a button to pass. So we have two buttons that we need. Ideally, implement a system where you can hover over your sprite. So your sprite obviously could be your card, a token, a character, whatever it is, and it'll have a white outline. And the sprite that is a target will have a red outline. Okay, we can do that. Alright, I'm just gonna minimize that and pull the comment off the screen there. So here's what I'm sitting at with the final project here. We have our two buttons in the bottom right. They said Magic the Gathering Arena, and I noticed that this is where their buttons were, so I just stuck them down there. We have a pass button, and you can see I'm just printing out the phase or turn order here. So it's the player's turn, I can hit pass, we go to the NPC, they have their AI turn, whatever's going on with them, and we'll get back to our turn. Now when it's our turn, you can see we have our cards highlighting, or sprites highlighting here. As we mouse over them, and we can't do anything with them until we go into our combat phase, right? The attack phase. Now we can click on one, select an attacker, and now as we highlight the others, we can select a target. And in this case, I made it so that we cannot target our own cards, our own sprites, but we can attack the enemy. And not only that, but we have effects going. So they attack that one, and in this case, I gave this one an effect of lethal touch, so it's able to instant kill. And just as a demo example, this one just has a generic attack, and all that's doing is just printing out to the console saying, I did the ouchies. Alright, so there you go. There's the simpleness that we're going for. So we have card effects, we have highlightings, we have our visual feedback, we've got lines indicating the attack to the target. We have our two buttons, one to go into combat phase, and one to pass our turn. And of course, that in itself shows that we do have a turn-based system going on. Alright, let's take a look at how to create this. Alright, well first I have my tokens here. And my token is just a node 2D, and it's got a color rect that's a little bigger than my sprite to act as my highlight. And just by default, I have it as white. It could be any color right now. It doesn't really matter, because we're going to be affecting this color later on. I have a sprite 2D, which is just showing, of course, my image. Then I have an area 2D with a collision shape over the sprite, so I know when my mouse is going to be inside of it and outside of it. And to signify that to us, we have two signals connected, mouse entered and mouse exit. Alright, so on our main scene here, I'm sorry, I just bumped right into that mic at the bottom, but with our main scene here, I have two tokens here on the bottom in my scene, and they're a child of a regular node just called player tokens. And then I have two set for the NPC tokens. So this is basically what's going to allow us to know what are our cards, what are the enemy's cards, what's our characters, what are the enemy characters, etc. Right? And this will also allow us to know, oh, hey, don't target ourselves. This is this is an ally token, right? And we have our two buttons. They have pressed signals, which are connected to our main script. and I just have a label at the bottom to show, and I have a line 2D that I called attack line. And this is what we're going to be using to draw our line from one token to another. We also have 2 auto loads that we can get to. So starting off, let's go with the game manager, since we're kind of going to build off last time. So we have our enumerator called turn. I've got 3 phases here altogether. We've got the beginning of the player's phase, we have the attack or combat phase, and then we can go into the NPC phase. I have an export, which doesn't really matter that it's an export, since we're never going to actually see this until the game is actually running. And then I have 2 variables, one for the attacker, one for the target. Of course, these are node 2D because that's what our token scene is, right? The root node is a node 2D. I have an onReady variable here because just for my label, just because I can't set this with an export, because the global manager isn't loaded into the scene until we actually boot up the program. Alright, so our first function here, we have end turn. And we're basically going to take a look at it, and we're going to see, okay, if it's the NPC's turn currently, then of course we got our 5 seconds so we can simulate the NPC having a turn. Then we make it the player's turn. And then we're going to go into this for loop here of all of our player tokens, and we're going to set their attacked variable to false and return. And what we're using this attacked variable for is basically to determine if that token can attack. So if it's attacked once, then that variable is going to end up being set to true. That way we cannot choose it, right? We cannot select it and attack again and again and again. And then, however, if it's the NPC's turn, then we're just going to call end turn again. Right? That way we can just loop back around to the player. Alright, now we have advanced turn. And this is basically just going to allow us to go from, if it's the player's turn, it's going to advance us into our combat phase by going to the attack portion of the turn. And else if, where we are in the combat phase, then we're just going to end the turn immediately. Right, we're going to call end turn, which should jump up. Because remember right here, it's going to turn it to the NPC turn next. Alright, now we're using clear attack target here, so we're going to be clearing out our attacker and our target variables here. Remember, they're node 2Ds that we're going to assign later. So we're just resetting them back to null once we don't need them anymore. And my process is just changing the label that we saw on screen. Alright. So what are we going to get into? Well, let's start with the easy one, our main script. That's just on the main node of my main scene here. And that's just saying, if we hit combat button, we can call advanced turn. If we hit pass, we can call end turn. And that's all we need inside of this script. Very simple. It's just holding these 2 responses to button presses. Now, the main thing that we're looking at is the token, and I did my best to kind of split this up using the regions into its own chunks to make it easier to understand. But here we go. Just going to click back over to my token here. So we have a few exports here. We're going to have our highlight, which is going to be that color rect that I've got behind the sprite. And I've got an export here for no color, and this is of course going to be casted as a color. This is going to allow me to select my colors in the inspector for each of these things. So no color is going to be completely transparent. This one, the highlight does not show. Then we have light color, which based on your comment, you're going to want this to be white. The target color, again, based off of your comment, you're also going to want this to be red. And line color, I just went with a yellow. in the export, and I'm just realizing, looking over there, we kind of went with McDonald's colors here. And then I have an export here for my effect list. And this is going to be an array of strings. So this is where you're going to be able to have your card effects listed for each individual token. And we'll use those to actually activate different effects on our cards or tokens. And then I went ahead and just got myself an on ready because I can't assign this because the token doesn't have access to this until it's already in the scene. So we're using an on ready in this case. And we're just getting that attack line that way we are able to actually draw our line between the tokens. We have two booleans here to let us know when mouse is inside of the area, right? So we know if we can click on that token, and attacked lets us know if that token has already performed an attack or not. Alright, so inside of our ready function, we're just going to set the highlight color to no color, so it's going to be invisible by default. And when our mouse enters the area, right, so when we hover over our token, mouse in is going to be set to true. And this is where we can have, or we have start having conditions. So we're going to access our game manager, which again is an auto load. And we're going to get the current turn. We're going to say if it's the attack turn, right, if we're in the combat phase. And we have an attacker, then we're going to set the highlight color to the target color. So if we already have an attacker selected, then we must be selecting a target. So we're going to have the target color be our highlight. And of course, just return out of that to exit early so we don't run the last line of code here. Because if we do not have an attacker selected, or we're not in the combat phase, then we're just going to use our light color, which is our white, for the highlight color. So now when we mouse over it, that is what is allowing us to whoops, that's why. Sorry, I was trying to run the token on its own. This is why we come in here and we're not in combat phase, so we're able to get this white, or the light color. And then once we are in combat phase, you notice we're still in here because combat phase is true, but we don't have an attacker selected yet. And once we do have an attacker selected, we're using that target color. Alright, so that's what we are up to currently when it comes to putting our mouse inside. And when we take our mouse out of the area, we're simply just going to set mouse into false and change it back to no color so the highlight disappears. Alright, so up to that point, you saw everything that we just did within the little game there with selecting combat and mousing over, and all of that will work. And now we can actually go into, I'm going into the process here, and this is where we're going to have the rest of our logic, and all that's going to be within, mostly within our if statement here. So we're going to say if we left click and mouse in, right? So if we're hovering over a token and we click, so we're clicking on a token essentially. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to try to set the attacker. So we're going to say if it is the combat turn and we do not have an attacker, right? So if not game manager.attacker and attacked is equal to false, meaning this token can attack, then we're going to perform this if check here, which is basically going to get its parent's name, which remember, my tokens are just inside of a regular node with one called player token and one called NPC token. So I'm checking if player is in that name, and if it is, then we must be inside of player token. and thus we'll set that node to our attacker. This will ensure that we can only click on our token when we enter combat mode to select an attacker. And of course, if you wanted some kind of zoom in or to show something, this is of course what you do is, so if you clicked on the enemy's card, right, so this is where you have else, and this way you would zoom in or show a close-up or display description of the enemy card, whatever it is. But we don't need that else for this. Next up, we have an attacker. So now we need to set ourselves a target. So again, we're going into an if statement that is almost identical to this. We're going to say if the current turn is our combat turn, right? If we're in the attack turn for the combat phase, and we already have an attacker, then we're going to check that the attacker is not ourselves, so we're not trying to hit ourselves. So if attacker does not equal ourself, and the attacker.getParent.name is not equal to self.getParent.name. So what this line is doing here, this is saying we already know that attacker.getParent.name is going to be player token at this point because of our previous section. So we're saying if our attacker, so if player token does not match the name of the parent that we click on, which it shouldn't, because we should be clicking on one that is the NPC token. So basically, if it's not a player token, then we can set that token as the target. Now, if you have card effects, this is where we can activate them. Now, this is still inside of that if statement. So keep in mind of the indentation. That's, of course, going to be very important. I have a very short await here. That way we can actually see, the line being drawn here. Since you specified that you do want that line. And I'm running through a for loop. So for E, which is a string, in GameManager.attacker.effectList. So whatever token is attacking, we're going to go ahead and get this effect list, and we're going to look at all the effects that are put inside of it. And for each one of those, we're going to go to our effects script, which is another global we'll get to here in just a second. And I'm going to use the method called call. And what call does, it allows us to call a function by passing in the function name as a string. So if I open that up, we can see I have a function here called lethal touch, which is what you saw where I got the target and just instantly killed it with Q free. And then I have a generic attack where it just printed out I did the ouchies. So this will allow us in the inspector to open up our effect list, and we can go to add element and we could add another effect. As long as the effect in here, we type it out, it matches a function that is inside of our effects script. And we could add as many effects to each token as we want. And this for loop is going to go through and it's going to activate all of those effects one by one. All right, now this reset line here, you might even be able to take just about all of this, if not all of it, and put it into the game manager itself. But what we're doing here is we're going to clear out the points of our attack line just to be safe. I'm going to access my attacker, get the highlight color and set it to no color, so we don't want it to be highlighted anymore because our attack has been completed, the effects have all activated. And the same thing with our target, we'll get the target and set its highlight color to no color. We'll then set the attacker's attacked variable to true so that they can't attack anymore. And then we're going to call clear attack target from our game manager. Now, like I said, you could probably take all three of these and you could probably stick them inside of your clear target attack function on the game manager itself. So you could probably do that if you want to clean this up a little more. And that leaves us with just 2 sections left to make this happen. So we have the next section, which is highlight if the attacker or target. So here we go. We're going to say if the attacker is itself. So if this token is an attacker, then we're going to permanently show this light color highlight. And if this token is the target, we're going to permanently show the target color for the highlight. This is what allows these to stay highlighted during the attack all the way up until we reset it here. Right? Because we reset this, we set them to no color, and we clear this out. If we don't set these to no color, then they could stay highlighted until we mouse over them. So this is just clearing that out for us. And our last section here is just drawing the line itself. So if we have an attacker and we have a target, we're going to clear out the points. We're going to set the default color to whatever color we're using for our line color. Then we're going to add 2 points, one at the attacker's global position and one at the target's global position. Alright, so if we take a look at this now, we go in, it's the player's turn. We can pass, we go to the NPC, we have our 5 seconds, whatever happens, attacker gets set on our tokens here, or attacked gets set to false, so that they're able to attack on our turn, and then it becomes our turn. We have our highlight based off of the light color in the inspector. When we mouse over it, and it disappears when we mouse out. When we enter combat, you can see we go to the attack phase. You can see we're still using the light color because we haven't selected anything. We select this token here, and now when we mouse out, he's selected as the attacker, so he's getting that permanent highlight shown. And now we can go ahead, and when we highlight over things, they have a red outline because we're selecting the target. Now remember, we cannot select the target that matches our attacker in terms of the name. So this is player token, and this one's player token, so it won't let us. But these two are our NPC tokens, and this is a player token, so since they don't match, we can select it as a target. And there you go, the line showed up. We had our 0.5 second wait. If I come back down here, the highlights were set back to no colors. The line was erased. The effect was activated, which on that token is lethal touch, which instantly gets rid of or Q-frees the target. And attacked should be set to true now. So that means I cannot reselect that one again for a second attack, no matter how many times I click on it. And of course, we cannot select the NPC token, but I can select my little buddy here. He can still have an attack. Cannot attack ourselves, but we can attack the other guy, and he had a completely different effect, which did not kill the target automatically. Alright, now if I hit combat again, that should advance us, which takes us over to the NPC's turn again. And we wait our turn, and now it's our turn. And once again, once we enter combat, we can attack with that sprite again. Alright. So there you go. We have a combat system. Let me go ahead and bring this up. Just going to zoom in on this. Take a look. Alright. So we have, it is turn-based. We have a pass button. We have our combat button to start the targeting process. We have visual feedback when they're being targeted. We're drawing a line from the attacker to the target. Hovering over a sprite, we're showing a white outline based off of our light color that we selected. And the sprite being hovered over that is being targeted is using a red outline, which is our target color. And unless I'm missing something, I think that covers everything for this one. So, alright, take care, have yourselves a good one, and I'll see you guys in the next one.